Each February, during African American History Month, we as a nation pause to commemorate the stories, contributions, and legacies of African Americans in our nation's past. At the center of this year's Black History Month celebration is the Civil War and the experiences and personal stories of Black women during this turbulent time in our nation's past. In the spring of 1861, the United States stood on the cusp of war. The war between the states not only held tremendous implications for the future of the Union, it held profound importance for African Americans, both enslaved and free, who hoped that slavery's demise would ensure universal freedom. American slavery began in 1619, and from that time on, many women, both black and some white, worked to abolish it. Black women participated in slave rebellions, made courageous trips on the Underground Railroad, and shared their stories through family quilts. The efforts of African American women during the Civil War era span an array of areas, from nursing the wounds of fallen soldiers to acting as spies for the Union Army. Perhaps most widely known is Harriet Tubman, the Moses of her people. She was a runaway slave from a plantation in coastal Maryland and made at least 19 dangerous trips from Pennsylvania back into slave states, where she liberated as many as 300 people. She was so successful that slave owners offered thousands of dollars for her capture. When the war began, she chose to risk her freedom and her life by acting as a scout and spy near Charleston, South Carolina, the heart of the Confederacy. In addition to her espionage work, Tubman also participated in raids on white plantations that helped slaves escape. She also nursed in Port Royal, South Carolina, preparing remedies from local plants and aiding soldiers suffering from dysentery. She stood by the beds of soldiers who had contracted smallpox and nursed them back to health. The house from which she worked still survives. Like Tubman, Mary Bowser, a former slave and abolitionist, also played a critical role in the Civil War. Bowser was born a slave in Richmond, Virginia in 1839, working on the plantation of John Van Lew. When Van Lew died in 1851, his daughter, Elizabeth Van Lew, a Quaker and ardent abolitionist, freed Bowser. Van Lew obtained a job for Bowser in the Confederate White House in Richmond, where she worked as a servant for Verena Howell Davis, wife of the President of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis. Bowser reported what she overheard about troop movements, Union prisoners, military strategies, and treasury reports to Van Lew. Their work was so valuable that Union commander Ulysses S. Grant later rewarded Van Lew by making her postmaster of Richmond. Bowser was praised for her excellent memory and valuable espionage. African American women also played more subtle but poignant and powerful roles in resistance during both slavery and the Civil War. The tradition of African American quilting, in many ways, incorporated Black women's resistance and resolve to give voice to their lives through storytelling, educating the next generations, and celebrating and vitalizing their history. During American slavery, Black women were often left to wear the unwanted hand-me-down clothes from their slave masters. Some women took this as an opportunity to create a subtle act of resistance, using the scraps to sew quilts. Moreover, during the Civil War, many white women involved in the abolitionist movement would sew and sell quilts to help raise money for the Union soldiers and to help keep them warm. When the Civil War broke out, many women who participated in quilting bees, church socials, and community organizations readily transformed their work to support the efforts of female anti-slavery societies, which included groups of both white and free African American women. Artist and quilt maker Harriet Powers is one of the best-known African American story quilters. Her Bible quilt and Pictorial Quilt, which were made after the end of the Civil War, weave a narrative through pictorial squares that draw from biblical scenes and stories. Her quilts, both hand and machine stitched, were made through applique and piecework, which demonstrates both African and African American influences. Powers' quilts are acclaimed for their bold use of these unique quilting techniques in storytelling. These histories comprise only a small portion of the vast collection of stories of resistance, diligence, activism, and inspiration that imbue the Black female experience. As we stand at the threshold of this year's Black History Month, let us explore the rich and vibrant experiences of African American women and carry their stories with us as inspiration throughout the year.